Welcome to the Cynical Developer Live. This is the podcast that helps you improve your development knowledge and career through explaining the latest and greatest in development technology, providing you with what you need to succeed as a developer. In this episode, we're talking about learning to code and changing careers with Ed Hazledine. Ed is currently a junior developer at Blue Fruit Software, which is his first tech job. As of this recording, he's been there for 5 months, and before that he spent 5 years teaching music at a secondary school in London, while learning to code in his spare time. In the journey to becoming a developer, Ed also started a podcast called A Question of Code, which you should go and subscribe to once you've listened to this episode. And that podcast had the aim of answering some of the common questions that people ask when they're learning to code. So it touches on a few of the topics that we discuss on The Cynical Developer, but in much more depth. It's a podcast about that. And I'm a subscriber. I listen to it regularly. It's a really good podcast. It's nice to hear another British voice or two British voices on the other end, because this market is dominated by Americans, isn't it?
That's true.
So welcome to the Cynical Developer, Ed.
Well, thank you very much. I'm a long-time listener, so I feel very honoured to be invited on.
Yeah, not a problem at all. It's nice to speak to somebody and hear from someone that has made that journey from another career and become a developer. And I may or may not have helped a little bit on that journey. It makes doing things like this really worthwhile when you hear back from listeners.
Yeah, you can definitely take some credit. That's fine. I did listen to your podcast when I was learning to code, and you definitely gave me a lot of motivation and lots of things I could learn.
Sure, and maybe I'm not going to do it like he did it.
Not at all.
Yeah. Now, before we get into the meat of the show, I would just like to say thank you to all the listeners out there that did enter into the Pragmatic Programmer competition, and that was just a bit of a sign-up form to win a digital copy of the 20th edition of the Pragmatic Programmer. Now, I've already announced that there were 2 winners via Twitter, but because of GDPR rules and all that sort of stuff, that I can't just go and announce things. I don't take people's names. I just take their email address, and once they're done and dusted, I will remove them. But I wanted to give both of those people a shout out. Now I've had confirmation back that I can use their details to announce them. So congratulations to Richard Quist and to Rodri Lloyd Evans. Hopefully you've got your copies of the book now and that you've got into it and really enjoying it. It's a really good book, and I think it's one of the cornerstones of our industry. And a lot of terms were maybe did not originate from the book, but they were definitely enforced by it. And one of the ones that I use regularly is rubber ducking, and I think that came out of there in Tracer Bullets as well. So it's a really good book to get. So if you haven't got it, do go and get yourself a copy of that as well. But back to the episode. So we've done a few of these now where it's been a little bit about the journey of people coming from other industries. Now, I was a graphic designer for a while, and that's where my passion lived. And then I became a developer, but I did that quite early on. And I've done a few episodes with people where we had a guy that was a DJ in Ibiza. We've had a welder on. We've had all sorts of weird and wonderful careers. And you came from a teaching background.
Yeah, that's right. Sorry, go on.
No, I was going to say it's an interesting sort of like switch to move into development. It's something I considered when I was looking to become a developer, but I haven't got the patience to deal with children. I can barely deal with other adults.
Yeah, I lost quite a lot of patience over the years.
Sure. And it was a music background as well, which I find quite interesting. Over the years, I've met a lot of developers, and one of the things that crops up quite often, maybe it's a numbers game, maybe it's correlation and causation not being the same thing, but that a lot of developers have a passion or a talent for music. Have you sort of noticed that at all? Can you draw any similarities between being a musician and being a coder?
Yeah, I have actually noticed that when I was looking around, seeing sorts of people that had made that jump and was kind of thinking, do I need to go back to university and study a different degree? I saw that there were these people that had made the jump from musician to coder. So it seemed like quite a popular thing to do, a popular jump to make. I there is quite a lot of creativity in coding, and I suppose that that you can draw on that from your musical training, as well as things like having to practice an instrument every day, is similar to the commitment it takes to learn a new programming language.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things, and I always remember watching a program that was on Disney Channel when I was younger. I don't think I was a kid at the time, but maybe sort of coming out of high school, and it was called Smart Guy. It was an American Nickelodeon show, and the main character had a really high IQ, and he learned to play the piano in a couple of hours or something like that. And he said something that seems to have stuck with me for whatever reason. I don't know why. And it was that music is nothing more than mathematical equations where you go up and down the scales, and it's very easy to work out how you move from note to note. And maybe there's something in that, and that's why it's very similar, because it's maybe that mathematical brain of how the melodies and that work together that maybe lend itself a little bit better to development than some of the other arts like graphic design and painting and stuff like that.
Yeah, possibly. That I do remember people going on about how music and maths are quite similar, and I suppose there's definitely a crossover there. Yeah.
Yeah, because I said I came from a graphic design background, and being to be able to be a developer, it was definitely a mind shift. It comes naturally now to me after years of doing it, but I used to have to sit down and go, right, developer mindset, think logically about this. Whereas when I was in my sort of more artist mindset, everything was all over the place, and you're taking inspiration from everywhere. Which there still is some of that, I guess, to writing code, but a lot of it is using tried and tested methods for achieving a certain outcome.
Yeah.
So there's definitely some similarities there.
Yeah, definitely. And I think now you talk about that, I kind of think about the amount of mistakes you make when you're learning to play an instrument as something that's probably prepared me for the amount of mistakes I've made when I've been coding. Um, there can be a very long period of time where nothing is working, and it's kind of the same when you're learning an instrument as well. I found that it takes a long time, and then there'll be suddenly there'll be a moment where you can suddenly do something, or you've suddenly cracked that challenge you're working on in your code.
Yeah, yeah. I've tried to play musical instruments in school. Like everybody in the UK, we were forced to play recorder. I then tried to learn to play keyboard and piano, which reading music I wasn't any good at. I could sit down and read it and work it out. I could look at it and go, oh, well, that's an A, that's a C, that's this, that's the other. But read it fluently, I was never able to do. So I was always getting into trouble for writing the notes underneath the music that I was reading. And my hands don't work very well. I've got hereditary arthritis, so I find it difficult to get that fluid movement over the keys.
Yeah.
And I completely ignored that, and I tried to teach myself guitar.
Why not?
Yeah, and you need a little bit more dexterity to do that. And I got to a certain point where I just couldn't stretch my hands enough, or I needed a bit more professional tutoring, and I didn't get very far with that. But like you said, there was those mini breakthroughs where I wouldn't be able to do anything, and then you would play a scale and go, oh, well, that actually sounds like a scale. Oh, I can do that now, and then play like little bits of songs and stuff like that. That was always good. I think the only song I could probably play all the way through is "The Horse with No Name," and I think that's because it's 3 chords. I think something like that.
Well, most pop songs in the world are 3 chords, I think. So
Yeah,
that's all you need.
unless the power chords, and then I can't quite get my hand on the guitar. But anyway, we sort of digress a little bit into and reveal a little bit more about myself on the podcast. I think if people are long time listeners, they're eventually going to know more about me than I do. But so you changed the career from, as you say, from teaching into being a coder. Was that just because kids are a pain, or what was your driving force to do that?
Yeah, the kids can be a pain. That's definitely true. But I maybe wasn't that satisfied in like the work I was doing necessarily. But I was thinking, I read a book Gödel, Escher, Bach, about about what's it about? It's a very hard book to explain. It's about I think it's vaguely about artificial intelligence, and I thought, oh, this is amazing. I'm going to see if I can start like messing around with computers and see if I can make something. And I realized that building an artificial intelligence is actually probably not within my skill set at this time. So I was like, I'm going to start somewhere. And then I started like researching around it and found out that Python was kind of the go-to language for someone maybe changing career or someone just starting to learn to code, just because it's so easily accessible to begin with. You don't need a lot of setup around it. You can just kind of sit down, write a script, and then get going. And then kind of just from there, I just started really enjoying writing code, and I worked on some websites, and then I did some like little scripts of my own. And one of the things that kind of kept me going a long time was kind of going to meetups and meeting other people, getting involved in the community, listening to your podcast as well as other podcasts. It wasn't solely you, unfortunately.
Bubble burst.
Sorry. Yeah, so it was kind of a mixture of things, but mainly more that more the enjoyment I got out of coding and kind of the things that you can actually do with computers that you don't think about when you're in IT lessons at school and you just have to make a PowerPoint make a PowerPoint or work out how to use Word, for example. It was really interesting to kind of see that the computers have this whole other side, and that was something that really intrigued me more than not liking teaching.
Sure, yeah. I think a lot of developers have done or made that same mistake that you've done. You got a bit of AI. Yeah, I could do that. I've had a couple of ideas for some AI projects, and these were a little while ago where you were working really at the low level. There weren't any of these cloud services that you could use, and I'd sit down and go, right, where do I start? Okay, so I'll download this this DLL. Right, what do I do with that? No idea. What's a neural network? And before you know it, you've spent umpteen hours going through reading all this documentation, and it all sounds very interesting, but you're still no closer to it. And then you've got to learn about training your models and that if you're doing image recognition and all that sort of stuff. And it's probably a little bit above me. I'm not smart enough for this.
It's a very time consuming hobby. Probably learning how to write an AI.
Yes, yeah, definitely. There's a massive difference between that and a Hello World application. That's for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So I maybe went a bit too high, but they say aim high, don't they? So.
Yeah, they do. You've always got to have that goal, and maybe that's the goal that sits on the top of your list. And I tutor a few people on how you achieve your goals and getting there and breaking those goals down into smaller goals. So maybe you just keep that as your higher goal and keep doing smaller goals, and maybe one day you get it. But it's never about that actual final goal. It's always about the journey to that goal.
No, and that's something that's been really interesting, is that this tech is there's such a wide variety of topics within like a tech career. I didn't know about any of them when I first read that book, and as I've found out more, then I've found out different paths you can go down, and kind of that's become a bit more blurry. The AI thing, I don't think I'm necessarily planning on doing that anymore. Now I know the kind of wide breadth of stuff that is available.
Yeah. There's a massive amount that you can do, especially now as well. There's new things coming out all the time. I think it's a really exciting industry to be in, and if you're not happy with being a dev in your current job, you can move job and be working on something completely different. Or if you're in a big enough company, you could even move teams and work on something completely different as well.
Yeah, definitely.
So the process of jumping from teaching to programming, I think maybe made it sound like it was simple. You just sort of woke up one morning and went, I'm going to be a developer today, and that's what I'm going to go with. How long did that process really take? Was it like these overnight successes that took 3 years or more?
Well, yeah, it did take quite a while. I suppose from first reading that book to actually getting a job was pretty much bang on 2 years. That was most evenings, most weekends. Also, luckily as teachers, you get holidays as well. So I kind of spent the time doing that. and it wasn't all amazing. It was very hard and very tiring, and there were definitely lots of times where I lost motivation and was like, I'm just not doing anything today. Why am I even doing this? I'm working a whole day at school, I'm coming home, and then I'm spending 2 hours on the computer learning other stuff. It just, yeah, there were definitely some low moments, but here I am. And I think one of the main things is just that persistence and just carry on going. I think a lot of people drop out of a lot of things, and kind of the people that shine through are those who can just carry on and kind of fight through that bad day, just put the bad day behind you and just move on and say, right, yeah, I do want to do this. I'm not currently where I want to be. That this is something I can definitely do, and yeah, just push through that.
Sure. Yeah, I don't know of any other career or any other sort of real process that has some of those moments like development does. You're sort of talking about where you may spend a day, a week, a month banging your head against the problem and you can't fix it, and it does get to you eventually, and you think, why am I doing this? And then all of a sudden you'll fix it, and the elation that you get from fixing that problem, no matter how big or how small it is addictive. I
Yeah.
think that it's got to be that keeps drawing you back in, because I've fallen out of love with development a couple of times and ended up coming back to it because there's nothing quite like it. It's amazing. I think.
Yeah, those mini breakthroughs are definitely one of the best feelings in the world.
Yeah. I've definitely been sat here and gone, yes, oh, I've got it done. And the wife's like, what's going on up there? And oh, I've just fixed the problem. And I often get mocked where I work. So some of my clients, and it happens everywhere, because I have this tendency when I'm working on something and it doesn't work, I get really frustrated. And then when it does, I make this stupid noise. So if any of you have ever played Commodore 64 games, you'd play like a football game and you'd get that white noise, that static noise of the crowd cheering. And it's sort of like, so I'm doing that and my arms are waving around at my desk like, yeah. And be like, are you all right? And yeah, sorry. This is working now.
Well,
Sorry.
yeah. Well, at work, when I'm at home, I spent 2 years kind of having that sort of experience, and my partner was just like, "Oh, what are you doing? What are you doing?" And then I got to work, and I got when I like jumped up out of my seat and went, "Yes!" one day, and then I just got a few knowing nods from around the room. I was like,
Yeah.
"Yes, I'm in the right place."
Yeah. People appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I talked about rubber ducking, and that used to drive the wife up the wall, because she'd walk past and I'd be sat talking to. I do have a silicon duck on my desk at the moment, but I'd be talking to something somewhere, or I'd be drawing on the wall, not on the wall, but on a flip chart on the wall, explaining something, and she's like, "Who are you even talking to?" And I'm like, "Well, nobody," but it helps me get through that process and that mental block.
It's necessary. Yeah.
Yeah. So, did you find it hard to switch from being a music teacher into a dev?
It was quite the actual like moving from teacher to dev was quite a scary time. I was doubting myself a little bit. I was like, what am I actually doing? I spent a year, 3 years at university, 1 year training as a teacher, and then I've been working for all this time. Is this the right thing to do? Because it's also, you do, well, I did take quite a big pay cut as well. So in those terms as well, I was thinking, is this going to pay off in the end? And there was like a couple of months where I just didn't have a job and didn't have a job lined up and had no interviews. And I was like, what am I doing? This is the most crazy thing. Being a teacher makes it kind of doubly hard as well, because you can only like quit at certain times during the year. It's not like it's not like a normal job where you can just like say, here's my notice, I'm leaving in 2 weeks. You have to really plan it out quite far in advance. And I like, just as far as I'm aware, tech jobs kind of don't really work necessarily in those kind of 6-month plans ahead. So when I was talking to some recruiters and said, yeah, I'm free in 6 months, and they're like, you need to come back to us in a long time. So that was quite a scary thing. And like, as I said before, just like kind of, I don't know, it's just I suppose it's a completely different thing, isn't it? Going from being a teacher, and one of the things that hit me when I got to work was I was kind of used to being the person in front, and like person standing at the front of the room in charge of everyone, and suddenly I'm like this junior developer that is kind of at the very bottom of the pecking order. That was kind of the hard shift. You've
gone from being the the person with all the knowledge and the person that everybody goes to find out about stuff to it being completely flipped on its head.
Yeah, I had to learn how to be a student.
Yeah. And every day is a school day as a developer. I don't think you'll ever stop learning, and it's something that I say to a lot of new developers. If you're of the mindset that you don't want to learn anything new, then programming is not a career for you to get into.
Yeah.
No matter how passionate about technology you are, if you're not willing to learn, then there's probably no real room for you in this industry.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're saying there where you had to give at least 6 months' notice to leave. I guess that made it doubly scary. The fact that it would be 6 months you'd leave, and then it could be 6 months if you decide that you couldn't get a dev job to go back to teaching. That it would take you at least 6 months to be able to go and get in anywhere again.
Yeah, exactly. Or you become a supply teacher, and no one wants to do that.
No, the hassle that we gave supply teachers when we were in school, I would never want to be in that position.
Yeah, I think everyone gives supply teachers hassle.
Even the teachers.
There's some places in London where you get danger money for being a supply teacher.
Right.
It wasn't something I really wanted to do. So yeah, very scary 6 months.
Yeah. I have a friend that she does some private tuition, and she does it with at-risk kids and kids that have been kicked out of all the schools and stuff. And you would expect her to get danger money and things like that, but what she actually gets is paid minimum wage, which is really nice.
Yeah, that's sad.
Yeah. It's a career that she doesn't want to carry on in either.
Yeah.
Maybe she should become a developer.
Yeah. She can listen to this.
Yeah. So, did you get a lot of puzzles questions from recruiters and interviewers when you would sit down in an interview with them and explain what your career history was?
Surprisingly not, actually. You would kind of think so, but I think these days, I think a lot of people are kind of aware of the career changes, and I don't know if it's like a popular thing to do at the moment is like change career into tech, and like the place where I'm currently working is quite open to that, and I think actively seeks people that are not necessarily have gone and got a computer science degree. So I've luckily didn't kind of encounter that.
Sure. Because the reason that that sort of came up as a question for me is that when I speak to companies and recruiters and things like that, primarily recruiters, because I do a lot of contract work. I've got a few private clients as well, but primarily work as a contractor. That a recruiter will ring me up and say, "So, what position are you looking for?" It's like, well, I've been a tech lead, I've been a solutions architect, I've been a developer, so I can do a little bit of both. I've got some people skills, so I can manage people, but whatever a business wants, and I always get the, oh right, okay, not sure what to do with it. It's like, well, what have you got? just show me anything, because I'm quite happy to go in and lead a team, which with the new IR35 rules, I won't be able to do that anymore. But I'm also quite happy to go in and just be a developer. I don't want to go in. I don't have to, or I don't want to have to go in and lead a team. I'm not too precious on that. I'm quite vocal and opinionated, as most developers are. But as I say to a lot of people when I go in, and some of the permies say, "Oh, this is rubbish," and I'm like, well, I'm a contractor. It's not my circus. It's not my monkeys.
Yeah.
So do whatever you want with it.
Yeah.
But yeah. Recruiters seem to find it odd that I want to do a lot of different roles, or can do a lot of different roles within the IT industry. I just wondered if it was a completely different career really threw him a curveball.
Well, no. I mean, it might just be the area I'm in. I'm kind of moved down to Cornwall, and the jobs market's not quite as big as other areas of the country. So
yeah. I know where I am. I'm in North Wales, and there's nothing really around here. There's a couple of local companies, and then you've got to move out towards Chester or Manchester and Liverpool. You get to Manchester and Liverpool, and there's a lot of work there.
Yeah,
but there's not a great deal in the local area, and there's a handful of us that seem to have moved around all of the companies. I know there was one guy, and I've spoken about him on the podcast before. I unfortunately don't know his name, but he worked a place that I worked as a junior developer, and he spent 2 years at that company working with my code. He left, he went somewhere else. He worked with my code. He left there, he went somewhere else, and he's like, I can't believe this. I'm working with that guy's code again.
Yeah.
So,
Sounds similar down in Cornwall, because my brother also changed career about
right.
between 8 and 10 years ago. So kind of he was a bit of inspiration for me, but he was also kind of worked at a few of the places in Cornwall because there's not that many. And he said, because there's a meetup down here as well, and you kind of see people and you go, oh, you've done your time at that company. Yeah. Oh, they've been there as well. They've been there as well. It's just kind of
Yeah.
a similar sort of thing, I think.
Yeah. So you talked about that you learned Python. Now, with everything that there is in tech, it's one of those things that's been on my list to learn. The only Python I've written is that I helped my sister with her physics degree with some Python. And I really need to chase that up with her because I'd never found out if it compiled or if it worked. She just sent me a link on some code on an email and said, can you sort this out? And I've never seen Python before. So I just sort of hacked away at it a little bit and sent it back and went, maybe that'll work.
And you haven't heard back since?
No, I've never heard back. I haven't heard back. I don't know what happened to her. So maybe there was a divide by zero error in the code and the world, the universe opened up and swallowed her. But who knows? Who knows? So anyway, back on track.
Yeah.
You learned Python, or you started to learn Python, and then your first job, if I remember correctly from listening to your podcast, was not with Python.
No, the job I actually got in the end was kind of more around C# and C++, that's what the company did. That wasn't my kind of first choice of place to apply. I obviously probably sought out the ones that said Python on them, but I think I was just getting to a point where that didn't come up, that those jobs weren't appearing, and I just thought, right, I've just got to widen my net a bit here, and I just started applying to pretty much everything that came up, stating that I was a junior, stating that like where I'd come from, etc., and just said I'm ready to learn. I've learned Python in the last 2 years while I've been teaching, so I'm sure I can learn a new language as well. So yeah, my first job was C#. I did end up doing a little bit of Python and creating like a Flask application with Python. So yeah, what I've seen from my company is there's little bits of Python everywhere. So my knowledge has come in useful because Python scripts seem to kind of be a patch for quite a lot of things that we do. So that's useful. But yeah, learning a whole new language as well when I started was kind of a bit of a challenge. But yeah, I feel like I'm slowly getting there. I'm in C++ at the moment, and I don't think I've been told no one's ever learnt C++ properly, so I'm not too worried.
Yeah. That sounds very scary to me. I always refer to .NET as pretend programming because there's so much done for you, and you hear so many nightmares and scary tales by the older developers with big white beards that say, "Oh, yeah, you don't want to go into that realm of C and C++."
Yeah, I spent a couple of months doing the .NET Core Razor pages, and I was like, "Oh, this is all right. Yeah, I can handle this." And then they were like, "Right, we're moving you to a different team. Now you're going to work with C++." I was like,
learn everything.
Yeah.
So you were looking for jobs for Python, and they didn't come up. Now that's something that I regularly do, is that I will look at job adverts, or when I was a Permi developer, I was looking for job adverts, and I was always look for jobs that fitted my skill set. I never really sort of thought, well, I can't do any of that. Let's apply for it anyway. Maybe it's easier as a junior than it is as a senior, as a seasoned developer to sort of drop in and go, I don't know anything about this, but can I come in and do some stuff?
Yeah, but that's kind of strange though, really, if you think about it, because you kind of expect someone who's a bit more experienced to be able to pick up stuff more quickly. But then again, I guess you could be kind of set in your ways and kind of think that I'm really good at this. This is the sort of thing I want to be doing. Whereas I could just come in and go, yeah, I don't really know anything, so just give me what you got, and I'll try and learn it to the best of my ability.
Yeah, and it is an odd one, and maybe it's a bit of self-doubting, because I know that I've been on GitHub and I've looked at projects that are half done and they've been abandoned for years, and I've read through the code and gone, I wonder if I can create this in C#, and read the source code and built the application in C#, and gone, oh, there we go.
Yeah.
But I would never know where to actually start. And there's a few programming language where I have been at places that I've never touched before. And they said, oh, we've got a certain bug, and I open it up and go, all right, okay, let me read this. All right, okay, I can sort of see what the syntax is. I get that. It's just this. Change that, and away you go. Because a lot of things are derived from very similar syntax, or by reading a couple of pages. Whether it's the best practice or not, who knows? But you could read a few of those pages and go, yeah, I maybe I get the gist of what's going on here. It's probably something like this.
Yeah. I think a lot of code seems to be like that. It's kind of, you just pick it up as you go along for quite a lot of stuff.
Yeah, it was when I first started out. I worked with a developer who I think I put him on a bit of a pedestal to start with, and probably still do now. But when I was starting out, I'd say, "Oh, I can't do this, or I can't do that," and he'd go, "Oh, I think it's something like this," and he'd just magically do something. We didn't have Stack Overflow back then. You had MSDN, but it was on a CD, so you couldn't even go and look that up. You just know where the namespaces were, and I was like, "How do you do that?" That is immense. I probably couldn't even do that now because I'm so reliant on ReSharper when I use Visual Studio or Rider that I live and die in at the moment. So much of it just gets abstracted away and done for you.
Yes, I do love a bit of autocomplete. That's great. But I also think I wouldn't be a developer if Stack Overflow didn't exist. I don't think I could have made it.
Yeah, I think we've definitely all had that crux at one point, and I think we all use it, if not daily, from time to time. With the stuff that I work on more recently, I haven't really been onto Stack Overflow, and I think that got kicked to the side for me. I worked for one company where I was working with bleeding edge technology. There was nothing on Stack Overflow. There was nothing even on the internet anywhere about this technology because it was new.
Yeah.
So I couldn't get any help. And then from that, I tend to sort of scroll through, Stack Overflow, no, next one, blog post. That's what it was. And it's always a last resort for me to go to Stack Overflow. And it's not a conscious decision either.
Yeah.
It's not something I really sort of think about until I sit down and go, why didn't I just look at that post first? It's the one that came up at the top of Google.
It's always the third answer down as well. That's the one. That's the one you want.
Let me just make a note of that one.
There'll be someone that explains it in the more depth than you can ever want. There'll be someone that's got it wrong, and then the third one is like one-liner. This is what you want.
Yeah. You just do it this way.
Yeah.
So, if you were to give some advice to someone who was looking at switching career, what would be the key thing for you? What was the biggest takeaway that maybe scared you, and you realised it wasn't really that scary?
I think just looking ahead and thinking I have so much to learn. This is going to be impossible. That was kind of right at the beginning, was something that kind of made me doubt myself a lot. Was thinking I know absolutely nothing, and there's all these people out there that have been doing it since, it seems like everyone's been doing it since they're 11, and they've all made their own computers about 5 times. I felt like I was completely inadequate. But as you spend more time doing it, you feel like a lot of people feel the same way as you, even people that have been doing it quite a long time. They call it imposter syndrome, I think is quite a common thing for people to have. And I think it's that persistence, and just keep doing a little bit every day. Keep going. And eventually you will get to a point where you look back and you think, oh, wow, I've learned so much over the last month, weeks, days, whatever, that you will then start to like have a little bit more belief in yourself going forward, and thinking, yeah, you know what, I have been at a point where I know nothing about something, and I'm now at a point where I do know something about it. Here's a new topic. I know nothing about it, but I know that I have the ability to kind of move myself forward and learn something about it. So I think that's one thing I found really important, is just making sure you've got loads of persistence.
Yes. Yeah. And the imposter syndrome is something that's becoming a bit of a cliche of podcasters. We all talk about it, and we all do episodes and episodes and episodes on it. I try to get a psychologist on to talk about it, because I've got some thoughts and opinions on it that I wanted to put to a professional and see what they thought about it, because I think that there's some link with it between imposter syndrome and high achievers, because I think that to be a reasonably good developer, you've got to have, like you say, some of that persistence, some of that drive to want to be better, to do better, that sort of puts you in that mindset of, I'm not good enough. I always need to get better, and I don't know if that maybe feeds into it somewhere along the lines. I just love to have a chat about it with somebody.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thought. Yeah, I hadn't thought
Yeah.
about that.
Because one of the clients that I worked for did have a psychologist come in, and I tried to get her on the podcast, but she's changed her specialization since then, and she'd made some comments about certain ways to deal with it, and some of those ways to deal with it, I'm no psychologist, but I've read a few of these self-help books, so I've read a book, so I know what I'm talking about. That say that they're very bad practices to do, and I just sort of like, well, let's talk about that. And there's a really good book called the Chimp Paradox, and if you've not read it, I strongly advise yourself or anybody to go and read it. It's really, really interesting.
Yeah, I'll check that out.
And that's about how we deal with incidences and things that happen in our lives. And one of the big things that I really didn't like about the book, well, it's not about the chimp paradox. There's 3 books. There's the chimp paradox. There's the chimpanzee paradox for kids or something like that. And there's another one. Now, the one for kids, it sort of teaches the children how to deal with their outbursts and things. And they talk about naming the chimp. So when the kid has an outburst, they give it a name. And I was like, well, that's one of the slippery slopes into multiple personality syndrome, disconnection between you and the bad behavior.
Yeah.
But so I have some sort of like weird interest in that side of stuff, which it's all useless information for what I do day to day. But useless facts is one thing that I'm well known for in my group of friends.
So all good stuff.
Yeah, and I think there's a burning question as to sort of like finish on that I need to ask, and it's something I wake up every morning thinking about, and it's, you started building a weather app. What happened to it?
Don't mention it.
What are those side projects that's just never going to get finished?
Yeah, I mean, it sounded so good just to begin with, and then time,
Yeah. Time and actual careers to pay the bills got
that got annoying.
Yeah.
Well, I'll get back to it one day.
Yeah, good, because I find it really hard to know what the weather's doing.
Yeah,
I've got a window I can look out of, but why move away from my screen?
That wasn't the idea. No, is you average out all the different weather apps. And then...
there we go. See, it's still there.
I know what it is. Yeah, it was a good idea. I just there's so many good ideas and so little
time.
Yeah.
yeah, awesome. So just to actually sort of like box this off, and that, what do you see as being your sort of next goal? Where do you see your journey taking you in the next sort of 6 to 12 months?
I think I just want to kind of really stabilize kind of my knowledge and working in a tech job, because I've been there, I guess, coming up to 6 months now. I think I just want to kind of continue learning. I'm learning so much more every day than I ever did when I was teaching myself. It's amazing just to be sat next to someone and just ask them a question when you're really, really stuck on something, which is a lot harder when you're at home on your own and don't know anyone who necessarily works in the career you're doing. So yeah, I think just really settling down kind of. I've still got plans for like 5-10 years, whatever, but I think just for the medium to short term, I am going to try and just kind of learn as much as I can, understand how tech businesses work and things like that, and just broaden my knowledge.
Sure. Yeah, it sounds like a good, solid plan. I like that. I always advise juniors when they first come in is that you want to get your feet under the table and give it a year or two before you start flitting around. And
yeah, I don't want to get.
I was asked at a local meetup recently by somebody who just finished a code camp, and I told him to subscribe to the podcast. So I hope you're listening. His question was, do I become a contractor or do I become a developer? And as a Permi developer, and I was like, go and become a Permi developer, because you don't know what you don't know yet. So you need to go and broaden that horizon and really get a taste for what the real industry looks like. Because if you become a contractor, you're expected to hit the ground running and have a lot of the answers, and you're not at that point in your career yet.
Yeah, definitely. And actually, interesting you should say that, because on my podcast that I run, A Question of Code. Sorry, this is awful.
Yeah,
Shout
so
out.
you run a podcast called Question of
Yeah,
Code.
I
Could you
do.
talk a little bit about that?
Well, I was just saying we just did an episode on kind of agency work versus working for like a big company, so I thought that might be an interesting crossover.
Yeah, it was. I had some opinions on that episode, and I found myself talking to you and your brother while I was driving the car, because I've worked for agencies. I've worked for small to medium businesses, and I work for enterprises as well.
Wow.
So
Go on, sorry.
It is very interesting, and it's very different. That they're all very, very different environments, and I think you need a different mindset for each of those that you're working in.
Yeah, and obviously, me and my brother, we haven't got all the knowledge, but we kind of just try and say what we can about what we've experienced.
Oh yeah, definitely, and it's all opinion based, and everyone's got an opinion, and everyone's entitled to that opinion, whether it's right or wrong, which is what it's about.
Yeah,
which is good. So we briefly mentioned the Question of Code podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Where can my listeners find it? Where can they go and get it? How do they get listening to you?
So I think we're on pretty much all podcasting platforms. Wherever you go, if you just search for A Question of Code, we should be hopefully at the top, if not somewhere close to the top. And we have a website. You can go to aqoc.dev or aquestionofcode.com, where you can find out more about us. And there you can find an email where you can get in touch, or you can find me on Twitter at ed_the_coder. Yeah. So
Awesome.
I'd love to hear from people if they've got any more questions for me. I'm happy to carry that conversation on. Yeah,
definitely. So do reach out to Ed and have a chat and do subscribe to his podcast. I will put all the details in the show notes, so don't be scrambling and crashing your car while you're trying to write those down. They will be in there. So that sort of just leaves me with thanking you for coming on and sharing your experience today.
No, thank you very much. Hope maybe we could get you on to our podcast and talk about .NET or something.
Yeah, definitely. Always interested in on coming onto other people's podcasts and forcing my opinion on them. It's good. It'd be good. So I look forward to that. And thank you to everybody out there for listening to The Cynical Developer. I'm James Stoddart, and you've been listening to Ed Hazledine talking about becoming a developer. If you have any questions about this or any other episode, then drop us an email, a tweet, or leave a comment on the website, where you can find all the resource links, show notes for each episode. And if you enjoy this episode, please leave a review on your favourite podcast platform, iTunes, Stitcher, whatever it is, and help The Cynical Developer to reach more developers around the globe.